So I was at a business function a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said, "Hey, Sandler, I've heard of you guys. What exactly do you guys do?" And I had a couple of seconds to unpack it, and I kind of pulled it off my hip, and it was really more of, hey, we're a sales process, a methodology of 7 selling strategy. When we zip tie them together, we can put organizations on steroids. But more importantly, we can effectuate a deal, an opportunity from beginning to end, whether that end is closing the sale or closing the file. Ultimately, that's our job, is to get to the truth. So there's not a lot of, garbage sitting in our pipeline. So Rob, there's a lot of people, in the market who know Sandler, but, by and large, that's really a thin slice of people, right? People who have experienced Sandler. What would you say to the broader market? What is Sandler? How does it work? And right, how does this impact people's businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rick. Sandler, to me, is a communication tool. It's a way for business development professionals to be able to go position themselves in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. In a society that, quite frankly, lives, dies, and thrives through these little cool devices that we carry around. So we're not the best communicators. And Sandler, when I first got into Sandler 20 years ago, I felt really passionate that it was a sales process. Like, we sold a sales process. If you do these steps,
right, A, B, C, right, in this linear progression, right,
this will be the outcome.
Yeah, it really is a standard, right? Sandler's a series of selling strategies, 7 selling strategies. When we zip tie them together for the organization, right? Everybody's a little bit unique. We can put their sales team on steroids. But when we think about the standard is Sandler. And, oftentimes organizations, or you think about salespeople, when's the last time you heard a salesperson say, I screwed up this deal, and here's why, and here's how I can prevent it from happening again?
But through my progression of my career and my understanding of actually what Sandler is, it's tactics and strategies. We might weigh in on some of the sales process, of what are the steps of that organization, and what are the factors that are going to go into that process, but we're going to bake Sandler over top of it.
And when we talk about the standard, when we can look back and say, all right, what went wrong? How are we going to fix it, if it's possible to even fix at that point? But more importantly is how we're going to ever prevent that from happening again. We start to think about that as being the standard of continuous improvement for sales. We can start to have really like-minded conversations internally, whether that's colleague to colleague or sales leader to salesperson. We can develop this culture of common language in an organization, wrapped around the standard of Sandler. So give us a little hint of what, strategies and tactics might look like or sound like. And I know everybody's business is a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that's a great question too. I think there's many times where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So prospect doesn't necessarily, they have their own agenda of what they're looking to accomplish in the meeting. The business development professional has a completely different agenda. And so there's no continuity, there's no defined outcomes, there's no framework to the discussion. And so both parties kind of leave that interaction unfulfilled, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. Regardless of whether it's first meeting, last meeting, whatever meeting you're in, right? Setting a firm expectation, we call that upfront contract. And oftentimes, right, we can lean into that sort of terminology when we're coaching or debriefing. Hey, what was the mutually agreed upon next step that you guys discussed in the meeting? Right now, that's a great question a sales leader should want to ask their salespeople, but we call that upfront contract. So, the question would be, Mr. Salesperson, what was the upfront contract you and the prospect set when you left that meeting? Mm-hmm. Right? Does Sandler operate with organizations, or does it operate at the individual level?
Yeah, both. A lot of times it is a sponsored, organizational, corporate sponsored program. But we also have individuals that raise their own hand and looking to invest in themselves in their own career.
Right. There's got to be common language. Everybody's got their own idea of sales. If you have 10 salespeople, right, they've got their own language of what sales should be. Yeah, and so like some people are really good at sales. I mean, innately they've got this, right, this, I don't know, aura around them that makes it really easy. What have you found historically? Are people natural at selling? Or, how does this work, right? Can somebody become more of a natural seller, and can somebody, do some things differently that might be uncomfortable?
Well, I think a lot of business owners, a lot of principals inside of organizations that have worn a business development hat at some point, they're a lot of times what we call unconscious competent. They're really good at what they do, but they don't necessarily know the steps and how they do it. And I think what Sandler does for those folks, once they see the process, once they see the tactics and strategies, a lot of them sit there and say, I do that all the time. And so we're just bringing context to what they're already doing.
We appreciate your time today and taking the time to click and listen and inquire about Sandler. While most organizations are really good at what they do already, sales training isn't something that that leaps off the page to them. But if you see improvement opportunities in your organization, we'd love to have that opportunity to chat with you.